But in my experience in these political talks in Europe, the most interesting thing is to start with the present situation in Brazil, and then as we go on, we can explain some things that happened before. We have a situation that begins a political crisis that begins in 2012, 6 years ago, and it's a very long crisis, and we have very many episodes of this crisis that we could analyze here, but evidently it would take a long time to analyze everything. So let's try to make a synthesis of the situation, starting with the present crisis in Brazil. I think that the starting point for this analysis is that the Brazilian government, which is a result of a coup d'etat that happened in 2016, is completely failed. It's finished. So we have a very critical political situation just at this moment in Brazil. One problem with evaluating the political situation in Brazil is that it's a very volatile situation. It's very difficult at this moment to predict what's going to happen in the next few months. The situation is such because the government that originated in the coup d'etat launched a very brutal attack against the living conditions of the Brazilian people, and these attacks created a critical situation for the government. We have a very strong leaning of the population to the left. The last polls, opinion polls, said that 89% of the Brazilian population sees the government as bad or very bad. It's a historical mark for a government, and in Brazil, we had very many bad governments. We have no lacking of bad governments, but this is probably the worst evaluated government by the population ever. So one first question we have to ask is, how did we get to this situation? Because we have a very well planned coup d'etat. It was no improvisation. It was no accident. It was organized and realized very gradually, trying to gain a stronghold on political opinion of the people. But at this moment, it's completely bankrupt. Well, we had one important thing we have to say about the coup is that there was a resistance to the coup from the first moment. If we compare the Brazilian situation with other countries in Latin America that suffered the same process, we're going to see that in the other countries, there was no organized resistance. In Brazil, we had from the start, although it was not a very strong resistance movement, but we had a resistance, we had an effort from the left to clarify the situation for many people, so that when the coup happened, many people were already conscious that we were facing a coup d'etat. In Honduras, for example, the situation was the coup d'etat was people were taken by surprise. The same thing in Paraguay, where in both those places, the coup d'etat happened before the coup d'etat in Brazil, and there was very little resistance and even consciousness that they were having one thing that we have to say about those political movements in Latin America is that they are made under the camouflage of an institutional legal process. Many people think in Latin America it's an important prejudice. Creates a difficult situation for the political resistance that a coup d'etat has necessarily to be a military coup, an open military coup. If you don't have tanks and soldiers on the street, many people think it's not a coup d'etat. They think, many people said this at the beginning, that the removal of a president, the chief government, is a natural, legal, parliamentary process, which is untrue. In all, what? Yes, of course. We had a very artificial kind of process that had a legal appearance, but was not legal. Also, many people think that it's only a very small movement inside the political institutions. You remove the president, but everything else goes on as usual. This is also not true. The coup goes much deeper than a movement inside the institutions. It's not a parliamentary maneuver. Many people said it's a parliamentary coup. It's not. It's a real coup d'etat. It's supported by the military that, for very obvious reasons, decided to stay in the background, not in the forefront. But the military presence in the coup d'etat is very evident and fundamental. Without the military, we would not have a coup d'etat. In Honduras, for example, in the last elections, we had a military coup d'etat inside the coup d'etat that was that happened before. The military put the country under state of siege to repress kind of opposition against the electoral fraud, which was very, very evident. In Brazil, when the coup was effective and the vice president substituted the president, Dilma Rousseff, they created a special ministry inside the government for the military intelligence. The military came on public record to say that if the situation, particularly the situation of ex-president Lula, was not resolved, that is, if he was not put in jail, they would intervene. So we can see that we have a very important military presence. The coup has two main objectives that we have to underline. One is political. The United States, particularly, but imperialist countries in general, want to create in Latin America a political discipline with obedient governments to serve as a basis for the political action in other situations around the world, like the Middle East, for example. And they need the support of a united bourgeoisie in Latin America to do this intervention in world affairs. The second is that the coup has the objective of facing the capitalist crisis that happened in 2008. It's a very difficult situation for all the so-called countries. And this crisis, this economic crisis, was not resolved, was not resolved. And they need to attack the economy of various countries to face the situation of economic crisis. From the very first moment, the coup in Brazil was a very hard attack on the Brazilian economy. They started privatize certain economic sectors. They eliminated all the labor rights of Brazilian workers, all at once. They started to make a very deep change in the situation of the escapou a palavra. Como é que se diz aposentadorias? Retirements. Of the retirements, and very many other measures that had the meaning, have the meaning until now, to attack the working people and the economy as a whole. This policy, this orientation, was the main cause of the crisis in the government shelter. When the economic program of the coup was made clear, when everybody saw what was the real meaning, the popularity, if we can say so, the government went down. When Lula was put in jail, the situation was even worse for the government. And recently, we had the strike of truck drivers that finished off the government completely. So right now, we have a situation where a very important bloc, political bloc, that unites the big capitalists of Brazil, the bankers, and the foreign capital, cannot control the situation that they themselves created. It's difficult to predict if we're going to have elections in Brazil, because there is no candidate of the coup that can defend in a whole the program of the coup, because this program was defeated by a series of political manifestations in Brazil, the truck drivers being the most important one. So they cannot present a presidential candidate to defend this program, because the program itself is opposed by the majority, the ample majority of the population. One analyst of the right said that the defeat of the government was made impossible to have a candidate with this program that could win the elections. The main competitor in the election, which is Lula, is in jail, and they are trying to make it impossible for him to participate in elections. Although, we must make it clear, he has all legal right to participate, even if he's in jail. Many people don't understand the situation, but he can present his candidacy. It can be rejected by the electoral court, but could appeal, and with this appeal, he would go to the election, and he could be elected. And in this situation, to reject him as a candidate after the election, after he is elected, would be a much bigger crisis than we have today. Some polls say that if he's not present in the election, 45% of all the electors would not vote. It's a very critical number of people. And this is now, as the election approaches, we certainly are going to see this number grow to even more critical, to an even more critical situation. So we have in Brazil right now, for the people who made the coup d'etat, a kind of dead-end situation. They cannot present an institutional issue for the coup. They would need to have a president, government, with political authority to carry on the economic and political program of the coup, but they are, at this moment, unable to realize this objective. So it puts the situation in Brazil as a very doubtful situation. What's going to happen? Are we going to have elections? Are we going to have an illegal modification in the political regime to accommodate this situation? For example, indirect elections. There is a law which is being discussed in the Congress that would allow for an election made by the Congress itself, which is completely inconstitutional. We have the alternative of a military intervention, and right now, Brazil, the bourgeoisie itself that made the coup, they don't know which way to go to face the situation, to solve the crisis that is created. The government is unable to govern. Michel Temer is a dead government. They would have to substitute him, but it's difficult. It's difficult in first place because he has a very strong control of the Congress. So if some people want to remove powerful people, they don't have strength to do so in the Congress. The Supreme Court of Brazil, which could do it, is deeply divided by half. So it's a critical situation where the bourgeoisie would need to replace the government by a more capable government with more political authority, but they can't do it either. They don't have the power, they don't have the means to replace the government. They don't have the means right now to elect a government that would have the appearance of political credibility. So we have a very fluid situation where probably what they are going to try to do, which is also difficult, is to put a transitional government on for 1 year, for example, try to mend things up, to organize the economy according to their own plan, which is a necessity, because if they intend to go on with the coup, they would have to put to action the program that they had in the first place. It means to give to foreign capital all the state companies in Brazil that are still there, to sell other assets like what reserves. For example, there is a negotiation in this sense in Brazil right now. They would have to attack the population even deeper. And for this, you need a government which must have at least the appearance of popular support. We have, for example, the situation in Argentina where there was a kind of a coup, but they succeeded in electing the government, the Macri government. But this government is already compromised. It's failing very fast. So it's not it's a bad omen of what could happen to Brazilian government if it it does not get enough popular support to proceed with the coup program. So it's a very difficult situation. Right now, we have many sections of the working class going into a strike. We have the electricity workers beginning strike. We have very many local sections of the work like municipal workers going into strike. And we have a very strong tendency to a general strike. If this would happen, the government would probably crumble. It cannot resist a very strong opposition of the population. A very important thing, a very important sign of the situation is that the electricity strike is a political, it's an open political strike. It's very uncommon in Brazil. Political strikes are common, but declared strikes are rare. The strike is against the selling the electrical system, what's left of the state electrical system in Brazil. So it's a political strike. And if it wins, it's a very devastating political defeat for the government. It could make the government tumble. So we have a situation in which it would be very easy for the crisis to go become even deeper. We could have a kind of a revolutionary situation in Brazil because the government is very weak, and it has realized a thing that was very difficult for the left to do, which is to raise workers' movement. We have a very strong tendency of works and popular fights in Brazil right now. The working class in Brazil was paralyzed for some 20 years. And now we are seeing strikes all over the country, and the situation is worsening for the right wing, of course, every day. The coup could lead not only Brazil, all the countries around it, due to the importance of Brazil in Latin America, to a very explosive situation. It's a thing that nobody would have thought some 3 years ago. The PT government was a very stable government. It was a government that had a relation of compromise with the workers and the capitalists, and the coup destroyed completely the situation, throwing the country into a political turmoil that could end in a revolutionary situation, which is a very important thing because Brazil is a decisive country in Latin America, and therefore in the whole world. It could create a situation of imbalance in all the world situation, which is already critical, as we can see, especially in the Middle East, where the imperialist countries are having a very difficult time to control the situation. See, Palestine recently, Hezbollah won the elections in Lebanon. We have a very difficult situation in almost all countries of the Middle East. This situation has not altered the balance of power in the world, but a deep crisis in a country like Brazil that certainly would extend to all Latin American countries could provoke this situation of unbalance, could disrupt the balance of power, especially because Latin America is a kind of zone that guarantees the power of the most important imperialist power in the world, which is the USA. The crisis in Latin America, which is, despite the various coup d'etat in different countries, it's we have a latent crisis in most of the countries. You can see, for example, the electoral development of various left-wing parties in Colombia, in Peru, in Mexico. Although these leftist parties are very moderate, are not like Hugo Chavez or Evo Morales or Rafael Correa, more radical expressions of the left. They are, in a way, an expression of the crisis under the surface. In Paraguay, the elections were very tight. The right wing won. Was very many people said that was a fraud. It's almost certain that it was a fraud. So we have the situation, crisis of the Macri government in Argentina, crisis of the coup in Brazil. We have a very explosive situation that could create a very deep political instability in USA itself. This is, I think, is a very important aspect of the situation. The United States tried to acquire some stability through the coup d'etat in various countries in Latin America, expelling governments they see as a threat, and they ended probably creating a situation of even deeper instability in Latin America and in the United States itself, combined with the crisis in other parts of the world. This could trigger a different political situation. But we have to consider that the up to now left of Brazil has not had the necessary initiative, political initiative, to have an important presence, leadership in the political crisis. For example, this is, I think it's a very important example. In the truck drivers' strike, we had an opportunity of calling for a general strike. The country was completely paralyzed, and the left was completely incapable of taking any initiative. We understand that the situation is because the left is very deeply divided. First, the biggest leftist party in Brazil, PT, is deeply divided. We saw recently that the 5 state governors that are from the PT, they created a movement to abandon Lula's candidacy in favor of a bourgeois candidate, which is Ciro Gomes, a man who presents himself as a leftist, but is like a right-wing politician. So we see that the division affects in a very strong way the main political party of the left in Brazil. This situation inside the PT reflects on the main trade union organization, which is the CUT, Central Workers Union, and all the main mass organizations of the country are paralyzed without political initiative. We know that there is a faction of the PT or of the unions that want to go forward, but they are being held by the, let's say, the allies that try to pull the PT and the unions to the right. If we could have a more active, a more decisive action of these big organizations, we could have we could change radically the situation. I think it's not an exaggeration to say that the government could fall, and we could have a new situation where the popular initiative would dominate the political scene. We would have a turn from the institutions dominated by the coup to the people. And this would radically change the situation in Brazil. Right now, we are discussing with our party, PCO, Workers' Cause Party. We are discussing with different sectors of the PT and other political factions to organize a conference of all the committees that were formed to fight against the coup d'etat. There are hundreds of them in Brazil. They are a very positive phenomenon, but they have no clear leadership because of this situation in the PT. We're trying to organize a conference to discuss a united line of action, a program that would be a clear, defined program for the crisis, to intervene in the crisis, and we are organizing at this moment discussions in very many cities of the country. We're going to organize a conference in the States and then go to the national conference. We think that at this very moment, what's most necessary in Brazil is to have the most important section of the active people, the resistance to the coup, unified under the same perspective. This could be confusing for many people. I see, for example, here, although I don't understand in fact, I can see it's a leaflet for the freedom of Lula. This would seem to be a unified program for the left in Brazil. It's not. There is no because of the divisions in the left, there is no real movement for the liberation of Lula. It's an illusion. I say this because you are out, you're seeing the things from afar, and you can have the idea that everyone for the freeing Lula. No, it's not true. Many people inside the PT, many people, well, an important section of PT is clearly for the idea that Lula stay in jail, follow judicial process, and PT should turn the page and find another candidate. This is the real situation. So, from this we can see the importance of having organizing a movement that can give a direction for the people to fight. The situation is very favorable at this moment. It's difficult to say how long it's going to be to remain favorable. But right now, it's a very favorable situation. The crisis in the government is very, very big. And it would be the ideal moment to act. If the government of the coup d'etat can find a solution for its difficulties, which are very big, the situation would be modified in favor of the right wing. Although the basis of the situation do not allow for a very stable situation of the government. They would have to take very many measures, very hard measures in the economy and in politics to stabilize the situation. But if there is no initiative from the left, they could achieve this situation of stabilization. In general, Latin America, the left is very passive. To act on the situation. In Paraguay, the official left, which is the important sector of the left for the leadership of the Paraguayan people, is completely integrated into the situation created by the coup. The same thing we have in Argentina, the same thing we have in Ecuador, and we see some very conciliatory sectors of the left taking the initiative in the situation. It's very everywhere. It's very similar to what's happening in Brazil. So this is how the situation is. And the solution is to create a united front of those sectors who want to take the struggle against the coup seriously, further, and that is not exactly it's not happening in Brazil right now. I'm going to leave it here. We can expand the discussion through the questions.
So, wait for this explanation. See if we have questions. Okay, so people who are present.
pessoal tá dormindo, né? Então, se eles não estão assistindo desenho animado na televisão. Well, let's continue from... I'm not going to repeat it. I'm having a difficult time to analyze things in English. I have to think in Portuguese and translate it to English. It's quite a trial. Same position towards Dilma Rousseff. I was very quick that it was useless to try to defend her government because they presented various excuses like she made things like that, which absolutely irrelevant. So the struggle against the impeachment was some organizations, the unions, for example, but had very little support of the parliamentary faction. If we want to analyze it deeper, in a deeper way, we had to say that they do not believe and they do not want to defeat the coup. They want to reach an agreement with the right. They think it's best for the survival of their faction, which is a political survival inside the institutions as members of parliament, as governors, as mayors, etc. So we have this situation. PT is a very it is a party who has very many factions. We have to understand that when a party goes, you have many opportunist interests, of course, because government attracts this kind of interest. And many of these people are not traditional members of PT. Some came from different bourgeois parties, and they have no loyalty to anybody inside the PT, even to Lula. That's the reality. I think that inevitably going to have a kind of selection of its personnel. The attacks that the party is suffering at this moment are going to make many of its personnel to go away to find another political instrument for the missions. So we have a situation. There is a traditional faction of PT, which is faithful to Lula. They are concentrated mainly inside the unions and social movements. They are not people who approached Lula for their own individual political ambitions, but they are in the PT a long time, and they have the determination to stand by the party, even in face of the present troubles that the party is going through. The other left-wing parties like PSOL and PCdoB, where the PSOL never really supported any fight against the coup, any struggle against the coup. They, for a long time, they said that they had the idea that Dilma's government was a very bad government, and the corruption campaign was a real campaign, which is very naive, even for petty bourgeois left-wing politicians. But they stand for the Lava Jato process, defended Sergio Moro. They said that it was necessary to cleanse Brazil from corruption. Things that it's incredible to hear from a left-wing politician. When the coup became clear, they voted on Congress against it, but that was all. Most of the rallies to defend Lula were very small because the parties that said that supporting Lula, they didn't bring anybody to the rallies, and this is the situation. It's important that people who are outside Brazil see the situation for what it is. I don't want to be pessimistic, but it's a reality. I think that we are progressing in rallying the people around the fight for Lula. But it's a very slow progress. It's not a very fast progress. I think it's going to become a very strong movement, but it's not at this moment.
Okay, thank you very much for your speech, for your palestra. Really, we appreciate very much because we need that so much in here. You know, these people that can be available to explain the whole situation in a way that we can feel also more confident to listen to. Okay? I don't know if a question, but for me, honestly, I think the leftist parties in Brazil, they are very divided, but it's also because of the Workers' Party. When they were fighting to be finally elected after 4 times Lula tried, right? So they had to they broke with the left parties. They broke. PT, Workers' Party broke. That we have to face. Okay, if you break with your compartners, your comrades, of course you're gonna pay a price for that. So, but PT, Workers' Party divided the left. Okay, that's the truth. They divided. So we cannot now say, I'm sorry, but you said actually a lot that the left abandoned the PT. I don't think so. I'm not, how to say, subscribe for workers' part, but I admire the left. All over Europe, they are left. Scandinavia, we are social democrat. Okay, I am not a communist. I respect your opinion about whatever ideology you have, all of you, but I'm not. Social democracy, the democracy is the way to go. That's my belief. And I think the fact that PT broke broke up the left wing made us to where we are. No unity. No, because of course, if you want to help, you also want to be helped. And how come they make collegation, collegation, collegacy with PMDB? And please, come on, is the most mafious party in Brazil, the biggest, the largest, and the most mafious. I'm from Alagoas, so I know. Small, tiny state, and they have cupola of that criminals, mafias, mafias. I don't see part of faction, actually. I think that's faction. Part is to work together. Then you do for your people, for your reasons, for your ideology. This is a faction. It's like a secticism. You have religion, and then you have sects. These are not good people. So, but thank you so much. I have to do this because I'm very appreciative that you're here. We miss this kind of debates and
Well, it may be surprising, but I'm totally agreement with what you said. We have been very critical of PT, particularly of PT's governments. Although I think it's the social democracy of Brazil. It's the Brazilian kind of social democracy. The important thing, I think, is we had the time to criticize the governments of PT when they were doing wrong things in politics. We had at that time to criticize. But then we had a new situation where the right wing launched an offensive against, which is not against PT exclusively, but against Brazilian people in general. I think here we have a kind of confusion, which is very present in Brazil. We should not confuse the policy of the right wing against the country, against the workers, which go through the attack against the PT government, but it's only a political form. It's not an offensive essentially against PT. So even though we are very critical of everything that was done, we think we have a very serious and imminent danger for all political organizations of Brazilian left wing, social organization, unions, the democratic rights. Democracy, I wouldn't say that because
democracy in Brazil is kind of a fiction. But the democratic rights that count, people like the right to strike, to express your opinion, etc. So I think we should not confuse the fight against the coup. Well, I can be very critical of Lula, and I have been all those years, all the past years. But now he is a persecuted person, and the persecution is not exclusive of his person. It's against anything that is going to oppose in any measure the coup d'etat. So we have to be together with him, although we do not agree with everything he's doing right now. It seems to me that this is the concept that is missing for the Brazilian left. They are not conscious that it's not the defense of his government. Some people defend the government. It's their right. I see many people say Lula is the best president Brazil ever had. It might even be. Might even be because Brazilian governments are very historically horrible. But independently of the fact that you like or not what PT did in government, now the political priority is to fight against the coup and to try to unite everybody, if possible, in the fight against the coup. I agree. Reality and people, it's grotesque, but it's not the question right now. We had many critics, he criticized a lot PT. Some people today who want to support the candidacy of Ciro Gomes say that some people say I'm the biggest supporter of Lula, and they say, but he had very many hard criticism of Lula. Of course, we had PCO, and we have today, but now it's the time to defend Lula against the coup. That's the main thing at this moment.
Sorry. Caesar said to divide. That's what's going on. Because left wing are like this, they're not like that anymore. They're so easy to break. So it was better to get together and form a government. And after they are in government and are rulers of the state, they can argue inside instead of outside. Sitting here, it's because it's about vengeance. You actually hate this guy. And so what? You should forget about it, get on with it, because everybody and talk about Lula, he's just a sign. He's just a man, not more. Get in government and get him out afterwards. So you should you're not talking at all about the population. You're not talking about what are the ideas because it failed. You haven't not got, you failed. So you have to change the system. You have to change the system to get on. You have to get new and better ideas for Lula were the first, and he was the first model. But it's really rare that the first are perfect. So you have to change the model instead. You can't go back to the 80s or 90s. Everything was Lula. You have to progress. It says on the flag. It's autumn progresso. So you should start talking. What are you bringing to the table? What will you do for the population? If right now it's just a party talk, and I lived in Brazil for 7 years, and politicians are tired of politicians like they are in the whole world, and they're tired because on the street, the fine and rich houses, that's politicians, and all poor houses, that's population. And all the politicians, so it's not just fine, they always armed, and they have the army. But so people are tired of seeing corruption smeared in their faces. And that's not just the left wing, that's the right. To every politician, they grab whatever they can do and they run with it. So if you should do, in my opinion, to take the money out of politics. Because when I just had an uncle going into in Ipatinga, and I asked him, well, what are you going to do? Who are you going to say? What are you going to do to the city? He said, that's money. Actually, he couldn't get a job, so he went into politics because he gets the first 9,000 reais a month. No, that was his first thing. It's nothing. He didn't know anything about politics, and he didn't have an agenda. I said, what are we going to do about it? Because it's from Chinese are buying all the iron and so on. So what I like to hear you today say to me, what are you going to do now to change it? Because I don't Brazil want to go 20, 30 years back in time and start over again with the same shit problem. You have to have a new model, a better model, the Brazilian model. Your kind of democracy. Or mine, or whatever. Yes, I'm Danish, so but still, you have to have not just free Lula. You have to tell why you want Lula free. That's 45 million Brazilians without a job. That's incredible. It's one in each family is without a job. But you don't talk about that here. Because I don't want to be smeared into this campaign about who did what and who stole the goat and who did not. I want to hear about the future, not the past. And especially youth that are going into to vote. There's millions voting for the first time. And what are you going to say then? They're looking on the internet, everything is free clicks away. It's a new generation. It's not the generation that got Lula for president the first time. So it's okay for you to be hateful against the right. I understand that, but I use that for anything. And especially the Brazilian population don't give a hoot about it. They want money. They want to live a life. And you should give them that instead of just saying, what does this look like? What are you gaining?
No, well, let's try to explain our position. First of all, we are in a situation where we have to struggle to preserve our most basic rights because of the coup. it's not a problem of being hateful of the coup. The problem is that the coup is it's a deep attack against the population. So we are on a defensive position. We have to understand this because otherwise we can fall into a trap that part of the left wing in Brazil is falling. That is that we make plans. They are not possible to be put into action. First, we have to defeat the coup, and then we can have conditions to put something into practice. But if we do not defeat the coup, we're not going to go forward. That's our view of the situation. You said, why not talk about the situation of the people? Well, good to so, but we think that the most important thing, struggle, is politics. No. No, because I'm not a professional politician in the sense that you said. We are a very outsider left-wing party. We have not been in government. We did not participate in the PT government. We were critical of this government. So when I say that politics comes first, is because you cannot organize a struggle against capitalism, against the horrible social situation in Brazil without politics. Would be frustrated. Then we have to discuss the coup, the disposition of forces in Brazil, because if we stand aside of those issues, those questions, we are powerless. We have to go through the political questions. I agree that the political model of PT is not the solution. I think so. But at this moment, we are defending Lula not because he's a model, not because he's a solution in terms of a model of government, but because we are defending our own political rights. If Lula, which was 2 times president, elected his successor 2 times, can be put in jail without any ceremony, you can imagine what's going to happen to every left person in Brazil. So our defense of Lula is a defense of everybody's rights. It's a very important thing. Then we have this situation. We have to analyze the situation. Of course, many people do not understand the situation in Brazil. They see politics being the action of criminal people, in which they are partially right. Most politics and bourgeois politics is criminal activity. But there is no alternative way out of politics. We have to have a political orientation to face the crisis. We have to in fact, I have to say to people, to the organizations, which way they have to go, which they have to do, face government that was put into place by the coup d'etat. That's the only way. We cannot escape from this. We had in Brazil discussion with the part of the left regarding the measures taken by the government. They practically eliminated all the labor rights in Brazil. It's a very serious measure. And people said, let's forget the fight against the coup and let's fight against this situation. It's not possible. The coup is more important than the attack on the labor rights for practical purposes. If you cannot oppose the coup effectively, you're not going to oppose the attack on the labor rights. It's very difficult. It means if you can't do the main thing, you're not going to be successful on the consequences of this thing. You cannot oppose the coup, but so you cannot be effective in opposing the consequences of the coup. Because the center of the situation is the coup. They have the power. They have the initiative. They are in the offensive. So if you cannot organize a movement to oppose them, you're not going to be able to defeat partial measures they have taken as government. The government is the target. That's why we didn't have any effective movement against the measures taken by the government, because there is no fight against the government. And the question of power precedes the other questions. That's why politics is the priority. But I'm not this kind of politician. I've never been in government. Our party does not have any people in the Congress because it's very expensive. We are a poor party. We don't have support from business or anything like that. So we are outsiders in politics in certain.
Yeah. So thank you, Rui. We can call it because it's a bit late also. Isn't it? So yeah, we had problems. Or this meeting was a bit delayed. So thank you very much for coming, and also thank you everybody for coming and participating in this.
Olá, nós da Causa Operária TV queremos uma TV que fique 24 horas no ar, para rebater todo o monopólio da imprensa golpista. Para isso, precisamos do dinheiro, precisamos da sua contribuição. Para contribuir é só entrar no link que vai aparecer aqui na descrição e contribuir com o quanto puder e o quanto quiser. É isso daí.